The knock came at 12:03. 3 careful taps like someone asking permission to breathe. I opened the door and found my neighbor on the step. Rain freckling her scarf, eyes bright with fear. She leaned close and gave me 5 words that split the night open. I'm scared to be alone. My name is Nathan. I'm 28, new to Maple Crescent with a thrift store couch, a faulty porch light, and a job that taught me to fix other people's messes and ignore my own. I moved here for quiet until she knocked. Her name is Olivia, 53. Grace sits on her like a well-fitted coat. Tidy blonde waves, a voice tuned to low. We traded small talk by the mailboxes. Sorry it's late, she said. There was a sound by my fence and the lights flickered. I know it's silly. It wasn't silly. It was honest. I stepped aside. She crossed my threshold with a gust of rain and a soft citrus perfume. I put water on. She stood in my living room taking inventory. The slanted lamp, the book stacked sideways, the photo of my father and me with a broken fishing rod. She observed without judging. The kettle clicked. I handed her a mug. We sat at opposite ends of the couch, a beginner's distance. She spoke first. My husband died 3 years ago. Most nights I do fine. Tonight the house felt bigger than me. I said I knew the kind of quiet that grows fangs. After my parents' divorce, sound could wound. I learned to oil the world. She smiled quick, grateful for a sentence that fit. Thunder rolled far off. The lights dipped and recovered. She flinched. My hand moved an inch closer. In the morning, I'll check your fence. I said it's usually a latch, not a monster. She nodded. Minutes collected like rain on a sill. When the clock slid toward 1, she rose. I walked her with my umbrella. On the porch, mist beaded on her lashes. Thank you, she said. And the words carried more years than a calendar can hold. I watched her cross to her door. A light came on in her kitchen. A shadow crossed and settled. I stood in the wet, quiet now until the umbrella leaked through my sleeve. Back inside, I dried 2 mugs and turned off the lamp. The room felt altered. Sleep came in thin strips. Near 3, a sound lifted me. A single hollow clack from the direction of her fence. Metal meeting wood with intention. Shoes, jacket, flashlight. The rain was done, but the night still smelled of it. I crossed the grass, slipped through her gate, and raised the beam. My footprints from earlier lay like pale moons in the beds. Beside them, a sharper set pointed toward the shed. Hello, I said to the dark. No answer. Then a porch light sprang on behind me. Nathan, Olivia's voice careful. She stood barefoot in a robe, hair gathered in one hand like a ribbon. It's likely a loose hinge, I told her, already doubting myself. We faced the shed. The door trembled, then stilled. I set my hand to the handle. It was cold in a way rain can't explain. The hinge side inside smelled of cedar, oil. Work paused mid-task. Rakes, a ladder, boxes with their mouths part open. My light climbed to a gap near the roof line, then drifted back to her face. Fear had left it. Purpose had arrived. Stay, she said. 1 word now, not 5. A steadier request and something else inside it. I stood there, the beam shaking just enough to tell the truth. Somewhere a siren rose and faded. The shed offered only its silence. The night, for the first time since her knock, felt like it might be ours to survive. The night after I found myself standing in Olivia's shed, flashlight trembling in my hand. I couldn't shake the weight of her word. Stay. It wasn't just fear. It carried something deeper, something she hadn't said but wanted me to hear. The next day at work, my mind wasn't in spreadsheets or deadlines. It lingered on the way her eyes searched mine in the dark, the way her hand clutched her robe like armor. By the time I got home, the sun was dropping behind the rooftops, smearing the sky with pink and gray. I saw her across the fence, kneeling in her garden, clipping away at overgrown roses. She looked up, and for a moment we just studied each other like neighbors who'd known each other forever but hadn't yet spoken the truth. Finally, she broke the silence. Thank you for last night, her voice carried, but it was softer than usual. I don't usually knock on doors. I leaned against the fence. Well, I don't usually patrol sheds at midnight. That earned me the smallest laugh, a laugh that sounded like it hadn't been used much lately. We ended up on her porch that evening, mugs of tea steaming between us. She told me about her life in fragments like stones laid across a river. How she had married young, followed her husband from city to city. How she buried herself in keeping the house together while he built his business. He'd been gone 3 years now. A heart attack on a Tuesday morning, leaving her with a silence she never invited. I learned how to fix gutters, replace locks, handle bills, she said. But I never learned how to sit in a quiet room without feeling like it was swallowing me. I didn't interrupt. I just listened because the way she spoke wasn't about facts. It was about weight, a kind of loneliness you can't see from across the street. When I told her about myself, about being 28 and already feeling like I'd lost more than I'd found, she tilted her head. "You're too young to say that," she whispered, but she didn't sound dismissive. She sounded like someone who understood. Then came the first shadow of trouble. Sophia, the neighbor across the way, walked by with her little dog. She slowed, her eyes narrowing as she saw us on the porch together. Olivia's back stiffened. Sophia gave me a smile that wasn't a smile at all. The kind that promised gossip before sunrise. Olivia noticed. "People here talk," she murmured. "They always have." I shrugged. "Let them." But the truth is my stomach tightened. I'd only just settled into this neighborhood, and already I could feel its web pulling tight. As the sky deepened to indigo, I stood to leave. She rose too, setting her cup aside. On impulse, she reached for the empty mug in my hand, and our fingers brushed. A small, fleeting touch, but it shot through me like a live wire. She must have felt it too because her breath caught. For a second, we didn't move. Then she whispered almost to herself, "I shouldn't have come to you last night, but I couldn't stop myself." I froze, the air thick between us. Her hand lingered a heartbeat longer on mine before she pulled back. Walking home across the grass, I knew the fence between our yards wasn't the real barrier anymore. It was what we'd stepped into, a space where loneliness and longing met, where reputation and desire collided. And though I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just a neighborly gesture, I knew better. Her 5 words had opened a door neither of us was ready to close. Whispers move faster than truth. By the end of the week, I could feel the shift in the air. Neighbors who used to wave now gave me cautious nods. Conversations on the sidewalk stopped when I walked by. I didn't need to ask where it started. Sophia had seen us on Olivia's porch, and Sophia never wasted a story when she could twist it into a weapon. One evening, as I carried groceries to my door, Sophia herself appeared. Her little dog tugged at the leash, yapping, but her eyes were locked on me. "Late nights with Olivia?" she asked sweetly, her voice sharp enough to cut. "She's experienced. I hope you know what you're doing." I wanted to tell her to mind her own life, but the words stuck. All I managed was, "She's my neighbor. That's all." Sophia smirked. The kind of smirk that meant she didn't believe me. And worse, she wouldn't let anyone else believe me either. Inside, I found myself pacing. Why did it matter what Sophia thought? But the truth is, it did matter. I was new here. I wanted peace, not raised eyebrows. Yet, every time I thought about stepping back, I remembered Olivia's voice, the tremor in her laugh, the way her hand had lingered on mine. That night, Olivia called. Her tone was calm, but I heard the weight under it. "Nathan, I think I made things harder for you." "You didn't," I said too quickly, then softer. "It's not your fault," she sighed. "I've lived here long enough to know how quickly they judge." My husband was barely cold in the ground when they started whispering about who I should or shouldn't see. I thought time would dull it, but nothing dulls gossip. I wanted to protect her from it, but how could I when I was part of the reason it had flared again? The following day, I crossed the street to help her fix the fence. A simple chore, hammer and nails. But Sophia's curtains twitched every few minutes. I could feel her watching, feeding on the sight of us working side by side. Olivia noticed, too. "Ignore her," she murmured. "She'll find something to talk about no matter what we do." But the truth is, ignoring wasn't so easy. By evening, even James, my only friend in town, teased me over the phone. "So you and the glamorous widow next door, huh? Man, you don't waste time." He laughed, but I heard the edge in it like he half believed the rumors. Later, as twilight draped the neighborhood, Olivia and I sat in her kitchen. The curtains were drawn tight, but it felt like eyes still pressed against the glass. She leaned back in her chair, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know why I came to you that night. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe I wanted someone to see me. Not the ghost of who I used to be." Her honesty hit me like a confession. I realized then that what was growing between us wasn't just chance. It was choice. A dangerous choice, but one neither of us seemed willing to undo. When I left, Sophia was outside again, pretending to trim her roses in the dark. Her voice floated over the fence. "Careful, Nathan. People will talk. And once they start, it never stops." I didn't answer, but inside my chest burned with a mix of anger and something I couldn't name. The rumors weren't just smoke anymore. They were fire, and Olivia and I were standing in its path. The storm came just after dusk. Thunder rolled in from the horizon, and by the time I heard the first crack of lightning, the neighborhood was already swallowed in shadows. I was reading when the power cut, the house sinking into silence. A knock followed, sharp, urgent. I didn't need to ask who it was. Olivia stood on my porch, rain streaking her hair, her robe pulled tight. "The lights are out," she said, voice trembling. And I couldn't sit there alone. I let her in. The air smelled of wet earth and lilac from her perfume. We lit candles, their glow softening the edges of the room. She sat at my table, fingers circling the rim of her mug, though it held nothing. The storm outside raged, but it was the quiet between us that carried the weight. "I wasn't always like this," she began. "When Thomas was alive, I thought I was strong because I never cried, never faltered. But after he died, I realized I wasn't strong. I was numb, and numbness isn't strength. It's just emptiness." I wanted to say something, anything, but her words rooted me. She looked at me across the table, eyes shimmering in candlelight. "You make me feel again, Nathan. That terrifies me." Her confession filled the room louder than the thunder. I leaned forward, not out of bravery, but instinct. "You're not the only one scared," I admitted. "I never planned for this. I don't even know if I'm allowed to feel what I feel when I'm with you." Lightning flared through the window, framing her silhouette. For a moment she looked younger, freer. The weight lifted from her shoulders. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as it found mine. "Then don't say it. Just stay here with me tonight. That's enough." The touch of her hand was gentle, almost hesitant, but it burned through me. I squeezed back, not caring if it was right or wrong. It was real. And then, as if summoned by fate, voices carried through the storm. From outside, through the thin walls of rain and wind, came Sophia's shrill tone. "Look at them. Lights on, doors closed. I told you." Another voice, deeper, likely William's, added, "She should be ashamed. He's young enough to be her son." Olivia's face crumpled. She pulled her hand back, eyes darting toward the window. "They'll never stop," she whispered. "Not until they've ruined both of us." Something inside me snapped. I stood, anger flooding my veins. "Let them talk. They don't live our lives. They don't know what we've lost or what we've found." She rose too, her candle casting gold across her face. For the first time, she didn't look like the composed widow or the gossiped neighbor. She looked like a woman stripped bare of pretense. "And what have we found, Nathan?" she asked, voice breaking. The question lingered, impossible and urgent. My chest tightened with the answer I didn't yet dare to speak. The storm outside howled, but it couldn't drown the truth rising between us. The storm passed, but the damage lingered. By morning, the gossip had spread through every yard, every mailbox, every neighbor's coffee cup. It didn't matter that Olivia had only come to my house during the blackout. In their eyes, the story had already been written, and it was uglier than the truth. That weekend, the neighborhood gathered for a community meeting in the church hall. Olivia almost didn't go, but I convinced her. "If you hide," I told her, You let them own the story. She agreed, but the fear in her eyes betrayed how heavy it felt. The hall buzzed with chatter when we walked in together. Conversations dipped, heads turned. Sophia sat in the front row, her dog in her lap as if she'd brought a witness. William stood beside her, arms crossed, ready to add weight to her whispers. The meeting started with routine announcements, yard regulations, parking disputes. But it didn't take long. Sophia rose, her voice carrying false sweetness. Some of us, she began, are worried about propriety, about the example being set. A woman of Olivia's age and a young man. She didn't finish, but the pause was filled with murmurs, with nods, with judgment. Olivia shrank beside me. I felt her hand tremble against her lap, and something inside me refused to let it stand. I rose before I even knew what I'd say. Enough, I said louder than I intended. The room stilled. You think you know her, but you don't. You think whispers are facts, but they're just poison. My chest burned, but the words came steady. Olivia is not shameful. She is not broken. She is a woman who's lived through more than most of you can imagine. And if I choose to stand beside her, that is my choice, not yours. Silence. Heavy, stunned silence. Sophia's face twisted, ready to strike back, but the room shifted. A few lowered their eyes, uneasy. Some even nodded, almost ashamed. William muttered, but didn't speak. Olivia looked at me then, tears glinting in her eyes, though she didn't let them fall. She whispered so only I could hear. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I said. I did. We left together, the hall buzzing behind us. Outside, the air was cool, washed clean by the storm. Olivia stopped under the old oak by the path. You've made yourself a target, she said softly. I don't care, I answered. And I meant it. For a moment, she just studied me the way she had that first night at my door. Then she reached up, touched my cheek with a hand both tender and uncertain. Nathan, you've given me back something I thought I'd buried. You've made me feel alive again. Her voice cracked on the last word. I took her hand, holding it firmly. Then let's live however we can. However they'll let us or won't. We stood there in the quiet, not as gossip, not as scandal, but as two people who had found each other in the unlikeliest of places. The world around us might never understand, but for once we didn't need it to. Her 5 words from that midnight knock still echoed in me.